Oh gosh, it's so good to be out and about. And it's great to be here with you. Thank you, thank you. I want to thank all your pastors for their love and support. Special thanks to, are they called the Sewing Bee? For the beautiful quilt that they made, and Susan Sokin and all the families who made meals for me and my son during the first months of my recovery, and all of you for your prayers and your support. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I'd be able to be here with you today without your prayers and support, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's been an amazing journey, and if you want to know more specifics about what I've been through, you can go to the website caringbridge.org, and you have to register, but it's free. And I have a few what do they call it? Journal. I kind of like journaled, some of my thoughts and some of my experience. So you can go on that site. So I won't bore you with detail, but I've been through 8 rounds of chemotherapy. I'm finished, and my PET scans have revealed that there's no active trace of lymphoma, which is what I was being treated for. So thank God for that. Obviously, you can see that I have a cane. I have some neuropathy in my hands and my feet. So I still have some work to do. And I was telling Daisy, I have to be more disciplined about my exercises. I used to love to walk around Magic Island. I haven't done that in a while, but I just started driving a few weeks ago. So thankfully, yeah. So I drove with my son and his girlfriend, Faith. And please be sure you say hello to Ben and Faith this morning after the service. They have been tremendous support to me, so thank you, all of you. So this morning we continue the sermon series, Still Called, and today's message is entitled, Still Called to Stay Connected and Engaged with Each Other. To stay connected and engaged with each other. The text this morning, again, is from the book of 2 Corinthians. This morning we're in chapter 13, verses 1 through 10, and I'll read this for you. This is the third time, this is Paul writing, this is the third time I'm coming to you. Any charge must be sustained by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. I warned those who sinned previously and all the others, and I warn them now while I'm absent, as I did when present on my second visit, that if I come again, I will not be lenient, since you desire proof that Christ is speaking in me. He is not weak in dealing with you, but is powerful in you. For he was crucified in weakness, but lives by the power of God. For we are weak in him, but in dealing with you, we will live with him by the power of God. Examine yourselves to see whether you are living in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail to meet the test? I hope you will find out that we have not failed. But we pray to God that you may not do anything wrong, not that we may appear to have met the test, but that you may do what is right, though we may seem to have failed. For we cannot do anything against the truth, but only for the truth. For we rejoice when we are weak, but you are strong. This is what we pray for, that you may be restored. So I write these things while I'm away from you, so that when I come, I may not have to be severe in using the authority that the Lord has given me for building up and not for tearing down. Pastor Rebecca did a really nice job in summarizing this morning's message in the reflection question, so I almost feel I don't have to say anything, which I'm sure you'd be happy to if I didn't have to. I'm not sure if there's ever been in our lifetime a more tumultuous and turbulent period as the one that we're living in the present. And if you identify with any of the historically marginalized groups in our country, I empathize with you because I know you're hurting. I know there are a lot of people hurting right now. It feels like inflicting pain and inflicting suffering is part of our country's DNA right now. And division tears at the very fabric of our life together as a people. Friends are not speaking to each other. Family members are at odds with each other. And dare I say, there are church members who are now silent with each other. Because of it, we prefer to avoid at all costs any difficult kinds of conversations and discussions about politics or socioeconomic concerns, because the pain and the rifts that it causes sometimes is just too unbearable. Listen again to Paul's words in verse 10 of our scripture. He writes, "So I write these things while I am away from you, so that when I come, I may not have to be severe in using my authority that the Lord has given me for building up and not for tearing down." Confronting serious divides is important, and we do it in order to build each other up and not to tear each other down. We build the church and we build the life of Christ in the church in our communities by being with each other. To get through rifts and divisions in our relationships, we have to stay connected to each other. We have to stay engaged in conversation with each other, even when it's the most difficult to do. We, the church, the family of God, we've got some work to do. We've got some work to do. To be connected and to be engaged. This is what families do. We work at loving each other in spite of our differences. This is what siblings do, despite the distance created by our own passions and our own opinions. Paul says in verse 1, "This is the third time I'm coming to you." So just a little bit of context. Historians tend to agree that Paul made 3 visits to the church in Corinth. The first visit was to actually plant the church. The other 2 visits, including this third visit that Paul references here in chapter 13, were to address issues in the church, including immorality in the church, and also to deal with a group of men whom Paul facetiously referred to as super apostles. Historians also believe that Paul wrote 4 letters to the church at Corinth, 2 of which we have in our Bibles, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, but the other 2 were lost somewhere along the lines while the Bible was being put together. 2 weeks ago, Pastor Rebecca mentioned how these super apostles caused quite a problem for Paul in the church at Corinth, claiming that their teachings were far superior than Paul's, as well, and they questioned as well his calling of authority to even preach, because their outward credentials, their skills, their accomplishments, they figured were greater than Paul's. That was their estimation of their own skills and accomplishments. Paul could have claimed his own education. He could have claimed his own worldly status to establish his apostleship, but instead he linked his authority to Christ, and more specifically to the suffering of Christ. Some in the church, as N.T. Wright observed, were embarrassed and ashamed of Paul because he had been imprisoned, he had been stoned, he had been beaten, he had been attacked. All signs, at least in their culture, that God was not pleased with Paul. And so, in essence, because they figured that God wasn't pleased with Paul, they too couldn't be pleased with Paul. It was like they were saying to him and rejecting him, "We don't trust you, we don't like you, so leave." It says something about Paul, doesn't it? Something that we can learn from, that in spite of the questions, in spite of the abuse, in spite of the rejection that he experienced from the people at Corinth, he never gave up on the church. He never gave up on his relationship to that church. I mean, 3 visits and 4 letters in a span of about 6 years. Despite the problems with and in the church, despite the pain that they caused him personally, Paul stayed connected to them. He stayed in relationship with them. Now the question is, can we stay connected, engaged with each other when we don't agree about everything? So two things I want to focus on this morning: mindfulness and truthfulness. Mindfulness and truthfulness, both of which I'm not really good at. So I'm a fellow sojourner on this one. In her book, Fierce Conversations, author Susan Scott describes the emotions that we people feel and associate with human connectivity. Positivity, comforting, belonging, rewarding, special, unique, different with each individual, safe. In the Corinthian church, it wasn't feeling safe. It was not as comforting a community as it could have been and should have been. The presence of these false teachers, the so-called super apostles, brought confusion into their midst. But also there was a general malaise. There was a lack of spiritual discipline among the people. And there was a fractious and unrepentant attitude of some of the folks within the church. Some of the members weren't very concerned about the health of the whole, but only concerned about their own self-interests. Do you remember the character Fiyero from the musical Wicked? Oh boy, this is not good. Oh boy. Some of you have seen Wicked, right? Okay. So when we meet Fiyero for the first time at Shiz University, he's a handsome, wealthy, and a very popular guy. But he's also a very self-absorbed, very shallow, and very callow fellow. His goal is just to have a good time in life and skate through life. His entire philosophy is captured in the song, Dancing Through Life. He sings, dancing through life, mindless and careless, make sure you wear less trouble is rife. Woes are fleeting, blows are glancing, when you're dancing through life. Thank you, thank you. Come see the play, come see the play. But there is one lyric in that song that declares his way of living. Learn to live the unexamined life. It would be nice to live carelessly like Fiyero, never thinking about how my actions and my words might impact other people. It would be nice to not have to think about how to make deeper connections with other people. Being mindless and thoughtless, even to me, has a certain kind of appeal. Paul writes in verse 5, examine yourselves to see whether you are living in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail to meet the test? Paul is asking his sisters and brothers in Corinth to think deeply about their walk with Christ, to think about whether or not they're really, really living into the values and the virtues of Christ. And while they're contemplating this, they should also be asking themselves, am I doing anything to strengthen relationships? What can I do to build others up rather than to tear them down? In the Old Testament, the Hebrew people are given what amounts to be the most important commandment of all commandments. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone, the Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. This is from Deuteronomy. Now, when Jesus comes along centuries later, he quotes this great commandment and he says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength." Did you catch that? Jesus includes the mind. Loving God and in turn loving others takes mindfulness. It takes thoughtfulness. We can't always go just on feelings alone. A couple of weeks ago, I had lunch with a friend who was visiting from the mainland. And I'm not sure how, but we got into a discussion about politics and about hot topics. We were on opposite sides of almost every issue. And it was obvious that neither he nor I would be able to sway the other to their way of thinking. And at some point, it was probably the most intense point in our discussion, a verse from Proverbs started dwelling in my mind and in my heart. It was a verse that I had read earlier in the week. It's from Proverbs 11:12, and it says, "Mean-spirited slander is heartless. Quiet discretion accompanies good sense." Now, neither one of us were slandering each other verbally, but I could tell in my heart and in my mind that I was having slanderous thoughts and feelings about my friend. And I wondered if he was having the same thoughts about me. Yes, I found his reasoning on so many topics suspect. But the problem was that I had shameful thoughts about him. God somehow spoke to me in that moment, and I heard in my mind and my heart, remember your friends. Remember that he loves you and he respects you. And you need to do that right now for him. You talk about mental and spiritual conviction. So I asked him, are you reading someone right now that could help explain why you think the way you think? So he gave me a suggestion. So I went on Amazon and I ordered this book. And I'm going to read it at some point. But more importantly, I'm going to read it with an open mind. And then I suggested to him to watch a documentary that would help him understand why I think the way I think about a certain issue. Staying connected and engaged with each other when we are not on the same page takes mindfulness. It takes thoughtfulness. It truly requires that we examine our motivation. It requires being respectful and remembering that the person or the persons standing before us with whom we do not agree is a child of God. It's remembering that the person whom we are facing is a child of God. And let's hope they're thinking the same about you. I appreciated that my friend and I could be in such a vigorous discussion where we are allowed to speak our truths, that is, hopefully our well thought out opinions. But what is also important in staying connected and building another's faith is being able to speak as well as to receive truth. I mentioned that Paul visited Corinth 3 times. The first visit was very pleasant. It was when he established and planted the new church in Corinth, just like we did here in Halawa years and years ago. But the second trip that Paul made to Corinth, he called it a painful trip. And the third one that he was about to embark on here in 1 Corinthians 13, we know that he's coming to lay down some hard truths. In verse 13, Paul writes to them that he is hoping that he doesn't have to be severe when he comes. And earlier in verse 2, he actually says, I want to be lenient. But, if they don't get themselves together, he's not going to be so soft the next time he comes. Confronting others was never an easy thing to do in my family. In fact, in most Asian families, it's a hard thing to do, right? And there are many cultures where speaking the truth to each other is very, very difficult. Today, however, with social media platforms of all kinds, most people are now calling others out in public. And they're using their platforms to speak their minds, in their estimation, to be truth tellers. And in most cases, there is no relationship between the messenger and the one who is being excoriated in public. Now, while it may be important, and it is important, to hold others accountable for their actions, I think today we've taken it too far. We have taken license not just to be truth tellers, but we've also taken the license to be ruthless and to be unkind in speaking the truth. As with our passage in Proverbs 12 that I shared earlier, some are on social media just for mean-spirited slander. Today's social media access makes truth-telling a platform for tearing down and not for building up. Now, I'm sure over the years you have heard or read for yourself this wonderful passage from the book of Ephesians 4, verse 15. But speaking the truth in love, we must grow up in every way into Him who is the head, into Christ. This verse is a reminder that we speak the truth, but when we do, we speak the truth in love. And we speak it to each other so that we can help each other grow, but not just helping each other grow, but to help the whole, to help the entire church grow as well. Or you may remember from Proverbs 3, verse 3, where it says, "Do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck." A reminder that kindness and truth cannot be separated. Kindness is one of the fruit of the Spirit, while truth is one of the great values of Christ. In my early 20s, which I can barely remember these days, I was like that character Fiyero from Wicked. I was a very carefree person. Some would say a thoughtless young man, or some would even say he's still a boy. I wasn't very mindful about consequences. But out of the blue, I was asked by a local church to serve as their youth director. I mean, that invitation came totally out of the blue. Now, all I had up until that point was a summer's worth of working with junior high students at my church. But in all honesty, I was actually one of those junior hires. So in reality, in that particular ministry, being among junior hires, you can start to, I got to tell you this story. I'm kind of off script here, but so I was joking around. I was living on Kauai at the time, and I was joking around with the junior hires, and I told them I was getting married next weekend, which I wasn't. I was just joking around. So Friday, the following weekend, just before I was just coming back to Honolulu just for vacation. This junior high student brought a wedding gift. Yeah, see how mindless I was? Anyway. So soon after I got that invitation, my youth minister from my local church, my church, invited me to lunch with him. And he also invited my best friend at the time, and he invited my uncle, whom I greatly admired. I thought we were going to celebrate my new position. But halfway through the lunch, the conversation took a turn. It took a turn. It became an intervention, I would say. They basically confronted me with the truth that I had no business being responsible for young people when I couldn't even be responsible for myself. You can imagine how I felt. Yeah? Can you imagine how I felt? Yeah, I'm sure you could. I was hurt. I was stinging. So to offset my hurt feelings, they offered to pay for my lunch, which was going to be free anyway because we were at my mother's restaurant. What kind of friends are they, you know? But thankfully, my youth pastor offered me an alternative, to intern with him for a year. I balked at the idea at first, but after a couple of weeks of really thinking about it, after cooling off, I took him up on it, and it was probably one of the best decisions in my life. They, the three of them, had prayerfully and thoughtfully planned out this entire meeting. And they knew that they wanted to express the truth to me, and they knew they wanted to do it with love and kindness. It didn't feel that way at the time, but in hindsight it really was. If we are honest with ourselves, we know that we're not often able to express the truth with love. We can do one or the other. It's hard to do both. Because oftentimes when we do express the truth, we do it out of anger. Or we do it out of annoyance. Or we do it because we're just at that breaking point. And we catch ourselves yelling often at the other person. We unload on other people without filters. It may be truthful, but it is not loving. Let's take away some other wisdom from the book of Proverbs, where the poet writes, "Rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." If we exaggerate the truth, or if we lash out in anger, our words can be dangerous to the health of the people or the persons with whom we are lashing out to. But if we speak the truth from a place of love and concern, our hope and our goal is healing, it's well-being, and its wellness. Let me conclude with this. Dr. Martin Luther King lived with mindfulness and truthfulness all the time. He preached and lived on the principle of seeking justice through nonviolent resistance. The entire movement, he said, was based on speaking the truth with love. In a 1959 speech at Earlham College in Indiana, he said, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant." In 1964, in accepting the Nobel Peace Prize in Norway, he said, "Man must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such method is love." The foundation of such a method is love. A friend yesterday reminded me of a little booklet written by Japanese pastor Mas Toyotomi. Way back in 1968. Some of you may remember this little booklet. It was entitled The Three Kinds of Love. The Three Kinds of Love. And the third kind of love he called the in spite kind of love. The in spite kind of love. What the Bible calls unconditional love, or agape love. He described, Reverend Toyotomi did, this in spite of kind of love as being the most rare kind of love, and yet the most needed kind of love. This kind of in spite of kind of love is not blind. It sees the flaws and imperfections and the shortcomings of other people, but still it will say, "I will love you anyway. I will love you anyway." So may God grant us the wisdom and humility to be thoughtful and truthful and loving and staying connected and engaged with those with whom we are having conflict. As siblings, we are called to build each other up and not to tear each other down. So, Wellspring family, let your love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection and outdo each other in showing honor. And may God make it so. Amen.